Islam cannot be true and Muhammad cannot be a prophet because something else is true. So our number one reason for the evening is that God has given us the truth in the gospel. God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, Jesus, to enter and to pay the price for our sins, the price that we deserve, the penalty that we deserve. Jesus took that upon himself. But unlike the Islamic message, where it's believe this because you'll get these virgins, or believe this because you don't find any errors in this Quran, when you do, you find a ton of them, or believe this because, oh, it's lovely Arabic, when that argument doesn't even make any sense. Unlike the sort of reasons we get from Islam, from Muhammad, we have clear proof from God. When God raised Jesus from the dead, when Jesus was dead, buried, and he rose from the dead, that's when we had God's stamp of approval. If you're going to listen to anyone in all of history tell you about God, listen to the one who rose from the dead. God's not going to raise a heretic. He's not going to raise a madman. He's going to raise someone that he is putting his stamp of approval on, confirming his message. And Jesus' message is that he is the divine Son of God who would die on the cross for sins and rise from the dead. He has confirmation from God. So if that's the message God revealed, and Muhammad contradicts that message, we have to say, so much for Muhammad. He cannot be a prophet, and no one should ever follow him.
This was pretty interesting. As you already know, earlier this week, President Barack Obama, during his presidential address, announced his war plans for fighting ISIS. The president said there will be airstrikes in Syria and Iraq to combat the terrorists. Most military experts say that the airstrikes won't accomplish anything, and they are already recommending troops on the ground, something Obama said will never happen. That remains to be seen. Larry Johnson, former CIA analyst and counterterrorism official at the State Department, told the Washington Times that it will take skilled ground forces to evict the combatants block by block. And that's because ISIS is already deep-rooted in Iraq and Syria, no thanks to the Obama administration for providing support and arming ISIS to begin with, something that is likely to continue. Obama announced in his presidential address his plans to arm so-called moderate terrorists who we all know have provided weapons to ISIS. They will continue to provide weapons to ISIS, which is like pouring gasoline on a raging inferno. And that, my friends, that's exactly what the globalists intend to do. They want to destabilize the region and then establish order out of chaos. Now, let's take a look at those pictures from Obama's presidential address earlier this week and tell me what you see. This was not photoshopped, by the way. These images have appeared on Fox News, Slate, Business Insider, and the National Review, and they are now going viral. And it is a chilling photo of what appears to be devil horns on Obama's head during his last presidential address. I'm not making this up. I noticed Mark Dice has already uploaded a video about this. These pictures were taken by press photographers from the press floor during Obama's speech about the Islamic State. And that's when he told the American people that the ISIS terrorists are not Islamic. So to me, it definitely looks like a demonic apparition. Anyone who thinks Obama is the Antichrist would certainly have their beliefs reinforced by looking at these pictures. And hey, remember the Bible series that was on the History Channel? A lot of people thought that the actor who played Satan looked a lot like Obama. I agree. I think he looked a hell of a lot like Obama. In fact, the Satan scene was later cut from the movie Son of God because of political pressure, as the actor who played Satan in the film, well, a lot of people, like I said, they said it resembles Obama. So now, I don't know what to make of these pictures from the presidential address. I mean, he's got horns coming out of the side and on top of his head. It almost looks deliberate, but hell, I don't know, maybe it's a psyop. Well, I tell you what, he definitely acts like the Antichrist, and now he looks like him too.
رح نتوقف مع أول اتصال من الأخ محمد. ألو.
أتمنى يصلون لأهلنا بالعراق حتى نتخلص من هاي الغمة اللي موجودة بالعراق ومن هذا الإرهاب، من هذا القتل. مألمني كثير، يعني أنا ابني مهندس وقتل لأنه هو ذبح وقتلوه، ودزوا لي شريط فيديو ويعني على سيدي ودزوا لي إياه مذبوح ذبح، يعني لأنه كان يعمل، هو مهندس، ويعني تعرفين ابني الوحيد اتصور ابني الوحيد
متأسفة أنا.
قتلوه، ابني الوحيد قتلوه وذبحوه ابني الوحيد. يعني هذا، يعني أنا ربيته مثل الزهرة اللي تتربى، مثل الوردة اللي تربينها. شنو ذنبه انه كان يشتغل مع قوات التحالف، مهندس، هو مهندس فقط. اخاف اعلن انه اريد اصير مسيحي او هذه، لانه كافي قتل، كافي ذبح. انا اعرف المسيح ونعرف يعني من جيراننا، من معارفنا، من اصدقائنا المسيحيين اللي موجودين بالمنطقه. وهذه
تعرف اخ محمد انه الله بحبك محبه خاصه، واعد لك مخطط خلاصي بدم المسيح على الصليب، لحتى ما تعود انت تحمل هم الخطيه وما تعود تحمل هم الابديه. الله اعد لك الخلاص من الخطيه واعد لك الحياه الابديه، وما عليك الا انك تقبلها اليوم.
لك يا
ريت تردد وراي الصلاه.
اوكي.
إلهي المحب،
أنا
آتي إليك اليوم. أفتح قلبي. اسكب محبتك يا إلهي في قلبي.
يا إلهي.
باسم يسوع. خلصني من جميع خطاياي. اغفر ذنوبي. واعطني أن أعيش في رضاك. أعطني أن أحبك. وأحب شعبك. وأغفر لكل الذين أساءوا إلي. حتى يلي ارتكبوا أعمال القتل، قتل ابنك.
حتى الذين عملوا أعمال قتل.
وأنا أشكرك يا رب لأنك خلصتني من الموت.
أشكرك يا رب لأنك خلصتني من الموت.
وكتبت اسمي في سفر الحياة. ولك الحمد والمجد باسم يسوع إلى الأبد، آمين.
ولك الحمد والمجد باسم يسوع، آمين.
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 مبروك عليك الخلاص أخ محمد، والرب يباركك.
الحديث والكتب الإسلامية تحت عدسة مجهري توصلت إلى قناعة مطلقة: لا يمكن أن يقرأ إنسان السيرة النبوية لمحمد ويؤمن بها ويخرج إلى الحياة إنسانا سليما معافى نفسيا وعقليا. أنت تذكر الطريقة التي قتل بها السيدة عصماء بنت مروان عندما قطع أتباعه جسدها إربا وهي ترضع طفلها، والمشكلة عادوا إليه يكبرون، فقال: لا يتناطحوا بها عن زان. أنت تعرف أن الماعز تتناطح لأتفه الأسباب، ولكن عند محمد قتل امرأة مرضعة سبب أتفه من أن يتناطح به عن زان. هل هذا نبي من عند الله؟ يعتريني الأسف الشديد عندما تسمح الجزيرة لمخلوق معتوه إرهابي كالقرضاوي كي ينفث من خلال منبرها سمومه ويبث فتاويه الإرهابية وسرسراته. كانت العبارات التي استخدمها ضدي: قد حرضت الكثير من الشباب المسلم المغسول الدماغ المعصوب العيون المبرمج على الكره ليمطرني بوابل من الشتائم والتهديدات بعد الحلقة مباشرة التي تناول بها ظهوري على الجزيرة. عندما يعتبر الإسلام المرأة ناقصة عقل وأنا أدحض مصداقية هذا القول، في تلك الحالة الإسلام يهاجمني وأنا أرد هجومه. عندما يدعو الإسلام إلى قتل الآخر الذي لا يؤمن به وأنا أدحض مصداقية هذا القول، في تلك الحالة الإسلام يهاجمني وأنا أرد هجومه. أنا لا أهاجم، أنا أنتقد الإسلام، ولكن للأسف الشديد نحن ضحايا التربية الإسلامية لا نرى في النقد إلا هجوما. أنا دوما أركز على اللغة، لغة الإسلام. لغة الإسلام لغة سلبية ميتة مشحونة بالعنف والغضب والحقد والعنصرية. الإنسان ناتج لغوي وهو حصيلة ما يسمعه في حياته من لغة سلبية وإيجابية، فإن غلبت اللغة السلبية في حياته خرج إلى الحياة إنسانا سلبيا نزقا رافضا غير منتج، وإن غلبت اللغة الإيجابية خرج إلى الحياة إنسانا إيجابيا سعيدا منتجا. ولذلك لغة الإسلام السلبية فشلت، لم تنتج إنسانا يستطيع أن يتفاعل مع الحياة بعفوية وبإيجابية، أنجبت إنسانا سلبيا. لو ألقينا نظرة على المجتمعات الإسلامية نستطيع أن نرى ما استطاع أن يفعله هذا الرجل السلبي. أنا لا أعتبر الإسلام دينا من خلال مفهومي للدين. الإسلام عقيدة سياسية تفرض نفسها بالقوة. أي عقيدة على سطح الأرض تدعو إلى قتل من لا يؤمن بها هي ليست عقيدة، ليست دينا، وإنما عقيدة شمولية تفرض نفسها بالقوة. عندما أقرأ آية على سبيل المثال والزانية والزاني فاجلدوا كل واحد منهما 100 جلدة لا تأخذكم بهما شفقة أو رأفة، لا أرى في تلك الآية أي روحانية. عندما تستطيع العقيدة أن تجرد أتباعها من آخر ذرة رأفة تكون قد جردتهم أيضا من روحانيتهم. المسيح رمز السلام، لم يحمل سيفا، لم يقطع رقبة، لم يكفر إنسانا. أما المشكلة في الإسلام إذا فعلنا كما فعل المسيحيون في القرون الوسطى وأردنا أن نعود إلى حياة محمد وأفعاله وأقواله سنكون في ورطة أكبر من الورطة التي نعيشها اليوم، وسننتهي بأسامة بن لادن وأمثاله. اقرأ حياة محمد، ماذا تجد فيها؟ غزواته وزيجاته وأحاديثه التي يقشعر البدن لبعض تلك الأحاديث. يقشعر البدن عندما يقول جنة المرأة تحت قدم زوجها. التعاليم الإسلامية استفحلت داخل جماجم المسلمين، ولا أجد طريقة إلا بفتح تلك الجماجم وتنظيف الأدمغة من الخلايا السرطانية التي تهدد حياته. عندما زحف الشعب السوري إلى السفارة الدنماركية وحرقها، حرق قلبي معه. لماذا؟ لماذا؟ الشعب السوري يموت جوعا. الإنسان السوري اللي هو صاحب حضارة يلهث وراء رغيف الخبز، فلماذا لا يزحف إلى قصر رئيسه وقد بلغت ميزانيته 40 بليون دولار في البنوك الأوروبية ويحرق هذا القصر بمن فيه؟ زحفوا إلى السفارة الدنماركية وأعطوا الغرب صورة غير صحيحة عن الشعب السوري الأخلاقي والحضاري، ولذلك أصف سلوكهم بالهمجية والتخلف. الصراع الإسرائيلي الفلسطيني صراع ديني. أنا مع القضية الفلسطينية، أنا مع الأطفال الفلسطينيين. عذابات النساء الفلسطينيات تقض مضجعي. أنا لا أستطيع أن أدوس على نمنة، فهل يعقل أن أكون ضدهم؟ لا يمكن. لا يمكن. هنالك خلاف سياسي، عليهم أن يسألوا قاداتهم والدور التي تلعبه تلك القيادات في حل تلك المشكلة. لكن هناك جذور دينية للمشكلة. كنت أقرأ في كتاب إسلامي منذ أسبوع أو أسبوعين، قرأت قصة صغيرة تقول: كان محمد يمشي مع بعض أتباعه فسمعوا ضجة، فقالوا له: ما هذا يا رسول الله؟ قال: إنهم اليهود يتعذبون في قبورهم. بغض النظر عن الخلافات يومها بين محمد واليهود، هذا القول يشير إلى أن قبور أجدادهم كانت في السعودية. مظبوط؟
صح.
هم أبناء المنطقة. البرهان على أنهم أبناء المنطقة يأتي من الكتب الإسلامية ومن القرآن نفسه. المشكلة مع المسلمين أنهم لا يميزون بين نبيهم وبين أنوفهم. فعندما تنتقد محمد وتنتقد أفعاله وأعماله وتنتقد سيرته،
وكأنك ضربته
وكأنك جدعت.
They do not understand.
Go ahead. Hi, I'm Jeff Contreras, and I'm host of Austin cable access show Therefore I Am, the philosophical show with the political edge. And boy, do I have quite a special treat for you today. For the next hour or so, we'll be talking to Fritz Springmeier, author of Bloodlines of the Illuminati. Fritz, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Fritz, your book has been out now for, actually it was republished, isn't that correct?
Yes, it's been reprinted twice. Yes.
Reprinted twice. And the title of the book is The Bloodlines of the Illuminati. What exactly is the Illuminati?
The Illuminati is the continuation of the mystery religions. There was quite a number of mystery religions in antiquity, and these mystery religions had councils that controlled them, and then there was a supreme council that operated clear from India to the British Isles that then coordinated all of these mystery religions, and that would be today what we call the hierarchy of the Illuminati.
So the Illuminati is basically just an extension of the mystery religion system, the whole type of philosophy.
Yes, it was a way of hoarding knowledge and power to a few special people.
And how do they hoard the knowledge?
Well, when I say knowledge, some of the knowledge is pseudo-knowledge, and some of the knowledge is actually scientific knowledge, which enabled, for instance, Christopher Columbus to be certain that he could sail across the Atlantic and hit land. He was associated with the Knights Templars, which is one of these secret societies associated with the Illuminati. So you've got different types of knowledge, but some of the knowledge is actually bogus. It's just claimed so that they can get people to join whatever mystery religion they're trying to offer.
Okay, Fritz. Now, why are families so important in this? It's obviously, you titled it Bloodlines, and that must have to do with the families. Why are they so important?
It has to do with how they pass power from one generation to another. It also involves the occult powers. they try to have full-blooded members. They believe that, at least the traditionalists within the Illuminati, which are the full-blooded members, they believe that to really be a powerful witch with all the occult powers that demonology gives you, that you have to be a full-blooded member who's got a genealogy that goes back many years.
So in effect, what you're talking about is basically generational Satanism.
Right, it's generational Satanism. And they have to operate also within bloodlines because of the way that they carry out their mind control. They make program DID, or what was commonly known for a couple hundred years as multiple personality disorder. They program their members with MPD, and in order to do that, you have to have someone who will disassociate when they're traumatized rather than die. There's three things you can do when you're severely traumatized. You can just curl up and die, or you can go crazy, or you can have the creativity and the disassociative abilities to splinter the mind into a multiple. And they want that ability. It's essential because the satanic rituals that they carry out, which are horrendous traditional rituals, blood sacrifices, requires a certain level of insanity and disassociative ability. In other words, what I'm getting at is if you were a normal, sane person and you had to participate in the higher level Illuminati rituals, you'd probably go crazy without the programming and the MPD that they carry out. So it's absolutely essential that they maintain the bloodlines.
Okay, Fritz, now when you talk about blood sacrifice, what do you mean? Are you talking about chickens or goats or something like that?
No. Unfortunately, I'm talking about human sacrifices. This is, you go throughout the world and you examine the different cultures, and you'll find that human sacrifice has been fairly widespread. And these powerful families have always felt that they gained power and through sacrificing other people.
So you're saying that the blood sacrifice that we've read or heard about throughout the history books has never actually stopped. It's just gone into secret.
That's right. Correct.
That's very incredible. Now, Fritz, in the book Bloodlines of the Illuminati, you point out that 13 families are in control of the Illuminati structure. But in your book, you list 14 families. Could you explain this a little bit?
Sure. They themselves decided that they would have 13 families, or really maybe a more descriptive word would be tribes. And it's my understanding that the reason why they chose the number 13, besides its magical implications, is also it's in mockery of what God had done, because as you know, there were 12 tribes, and then Ephraim and Manasseh were added, which were split off of the tribe of Joseph, which gave you 13 tribes of Israel. And so in mockery of that, then they have chosen 13 satanic bloodlines. But in working with people that were in the Illuminati and helping people get out of the Illuminati, I've gotten a fairly good handle on what last surnames they use. And although there's hundreds of, say for instance, Rothschilds in the United States, most of the descendants of the Rothschilds have other surnames. And so when I say bloodlines, that's more descriptive of families. And there are certain families within the entire context of the Illuminati that have become powerful in themselves, but aren't labeled by them as one of the top 13. And as there's a continual power struggle between everybody within the hierarchy, you have some factions that become more powerful, and as those families become more powerful, they deserve recognition of their own. So I listed the Reynolds and the Krupp family. Actually, I listed 2 extra besides the 13, the Reynolds and the Krupp family, because from the inside information I had gotten, they were very powerful.
So what you're saying is that the families that are the top 13 families right now were not the top 13 families, say, of maybe 200 years ago, or even as far back as 1,000 years ago, that as these Illuminati families struggle for power within their own system, they replace some families with others and vice versa.
Yeah, I believe that that process is ongoing. But I also believe that beyond just having the 13 families that they have listed as important or the top, they also, in a sense, recognize the power of other families. For instance, Bill Clinton has become very powerful in his own right. So, or the George Bush family. So, although they are descendants of these 13 tribes, they in themselves now, in this time period, are worthy of special focus or mention.
Okay, Fritz. Well, we've talked a little bit about the Illuminati structure. Could you briefly explain how this structure is set up?
Yes, it's a pyramid structure. There's 2 basic levels in the Illuminati. There's the anarchy level. In one of my books, I listed hundreds of satanic covens and their addresses across the United States. I mean, there were so many that I listed, numerous pages, that I haven't gone through and counted how many hundreds of addresses of different covens. And these are very eclectic, and besides these witchcraft covens, there's other lodge systems and other things also on the anarchy level. On the anarchy level, you can't discern any pattern because everybody believes differently. Then there's 3 levels within the anarchy level. As you know, there's 3 levels to witchcraft. And then the next level are is the hierarchy level, which also has basically 3 levels to it. Although within those 3 levels there's ranks and grades, and above that there are councils that you can belong to that have special powers, and there's also special ranks and grades above those 3 basic grades. But yeah, it's basically anarchy level and hierarchy level with 3 levels to each of those.
Now, how does this structure basically control, or why should we even be worried about the Illuminati? If there's just a structure that's out there with anarchy, and then there's the top structure that controls the anarchy level, isn't that just some type of contained system within itself? Why should we, as just normal everyday people, be worried about this?
Well, the general public, as you probably know, is not concerned about this, but they should be, because all kinds of things, all aspects of their lives are influenced by these people. They're the movers and shakers of the world. There's some disinformation out there that I need to clarify, and that is the misunderstanding that's common out there is that this man, Adam Weishaupt, which was a pseudonym, a name that he had taken actually, started the Illuminati. He did create a modern structure for it. He was paid by these families to create a modern structure. But he didn't originate the Illuminati. The Illuminati goes back thousands of years before him. And the reason why I mention this is that if we go back into antiquity, we will see that there were certain families that were deified as gods, like Pharaoh, Alexander the Great. Maybe some of the viewers don't know that Alexander the Great believed that he was descended from gods. Genghis Khan, who's still worshipped in Mongolia. These powerful families believed they were gods, and they controlled through their priesthoods in these mystery religions the people that were subservient to them. They never wanted to relinquish power. They networked together, and over history you can never find any point in history where they gave up their power. What they did is they did a lot of sleight of hands and went underground or behind the scenes and let other people become frontmen, but they've still stayed in power. You can see a lot of, I give a lot of evidence of that in my Bloodlines of the Illuminati book. Just some everyday examples that I ran into is, as a boy, you know, I met Henry Cabot Lodge, and someone who would read American history would know about John Cabot exploring the United States, which was of the Italian Caboto family. This is an ancient family, and yet you can see their influence in history all down through the years. Recently there was a book, Holy Blood, Holy Grail. Well, I say recent, it's not been recent, but it became a bestseller, and then the authors made a trilogy of books, Messianic Legacy and The Temple and the Lodge, and Pageant and Lay and Lincoln were the authors of that trilogy of books. And they go in and discuss how all of the royalty and aristocrats of Europe are descended from one single bloodline. Now, of course, then when you go to look at our presidents, you find that 11 of our presidents, at least 11, are part of that bloodline.
At least 11 presidents are descendants from European royalty.
Right, the Merovingian dynasty, at least 11. And a man recently, you know, David Icke, you may have heard of him,
yes, says
that he has the genealogy charts to show that all of our presidents were related. I have, in the talks that I've given in the last couple days here in Austin, I showed a genealogy chart that I have, which shows 12 of the American presidents very closely related.
Okay, Fritz. Well, you talked about how these Illuminati families, when they have power, and we can see that, then they go into hiding. Most people would say that the Templars, the Knights Templars, were one of these Illuminati structures. Could you explain basically how they supposedly went into hiding? Because you hear about the Templars, they had quite a long reign, and then the French turned against them, and then they were outlawed by the Pope, and then they just disappeared out of history.
Right, and but they didn't. Although the Pope outlawed them, they were able to flee, and initially they went to places in Spain and Portugal, and from there they boarded ships and they sailed to Scotland. And there was a decision made to give Scotland its independence, and the Knights Templars that landed in Scotland then in the Battle of Bannockburn helped the Scottish gain their independence, and then became very prominent in the affairs of Scotland.
Well, you know, Fritz, I saw the movie Braveheart, and I don't remember them being any Templar Knights in that movie.
Yes, that's true, but the movie ended before the Battle of Bannockburn.
Oh, all right, I understand now. Okay. Well, Fritz, now that we know basically a little bit about the Illuminati and about how they structure their system, can you give us a little bit of the mindset of these Illuminati families? I mean, why do these families, these 13 families and other families, feel that they have the right or the authority to control almost every aspect of our lives? These families, since antiquity, have believed that they were gods, and of course they have been worshipped in many periods as gods. And they continue to pass that prideful belief down from one generation to another. They believe that they're a superior being. Oftentimes, when I've seen quotes by these people or heard people relate what they heard, you see that they refer to us as ants or cattle, and they basically have the idea that they were born to be gods and rule us, and we were born to serve them.
Okay, so they felt that they were gods and they were worshipped as such in ancient times, but with the rise of Christianity and things such as the Inquisition and maybe even the Reformation, shouldn't the people of history have stomped all of this out?
They made a decision that they would use Christianity for their own ends. So they established churches that they themselves controlled, and they went behind the scenes and set up a lot of fronts. So what you see, for instance, as proof of what I'm talking about, is at the end of World War II, there was a commission sent around Europe to examine all of the churches and cathedrals that had been damaged by the bombing, and they found something like 80% of these churches had hidden occult altars underneath the Christian altar that wasn't exposed until they were damaged. In other words, what was happening is these churches were built on ley lines, and satanic rituals had been secretly practiced in these Christian churches all down through the Middle Ages and up to present times. These were sacred sites that the churches were built on. In fact, some of them were built on very sacred Druid sites and things like this. And so the Christian churches were simply functioning as a front so that these people could do their human sacrifices and so forth in secret. And of course, then they became pillars of society with their multiple personalities. They could have a front personality that was the ideal Christian, and on the Sabbat, on Friday night, they could be sacrificing somebody, and perhaps on Sunday morning, they could be the reverend that was giving the sermon. There's a number of other proofs that one can, or evidences of what was going on. If you go throughout Europe, you'll see a large number of the churches had winged reptilian gargoyles put on them, including something that's really bizarre. They would have people, statues of people bent over how do you describe it on television? They're bent over taking a dump, you know.
And this is on the side of a cathedral?
This is on sides of churches that were built, the statues built, naked people showing their bare bottoms. And if you ask, why did these Masonic trade guilds build gargoyles and people taking an excrement, you're told they did it for Christ.
And I guess, Rich, people really don't understand is that most of Christianity evolved from the Catholic religion. And the word Catholic itself means universal. And so they just went out into their areas and just absorbed all of the local religions of whatever land they were at.
That's very well said. There were a number of mystery religions that bestowed their authority into the Catholic Church. For instance, the mystery religion of Dagon had which was the fish god,
and you'll notice that one of the symbols that the Christians use today is the fish, and the Pope's hat, his mitre hat, was the crown of authority of the head of the mystery religion of Dagon. So he at one point in history was given the authority to be head of that mystery religion, and so yeah, the Catholic Church was a good way to also absorb a lot of the paganism. Right, besides being a front for the more serious, hardcore.
So you mean, Fritz, when I'm driving around in my car and I see another car in front of me with the little fish symbol on the back of it, that the symbol, in reality, even though they believe it represents Christ, is really a symbol for the Dagon mystery religion?
I don't think that you'll find Christians putting it on there because they worship Dagon, but all I'm doing is saying a lot of these symbols have histories beyond what the Christian Church thinks about. You'll find a lot of, well, for instance, I have personally with my own eyes seen a good number, or I don't know if good is the word for it, but I've seen a number of churches with the Masonic Knights Templar logo on the side of their churches.
And what logo is that?
It's a cross and a crown.
Cross and crown.
Right. Okay. It's a particular, it's designed a certain way, and it's very clear that it's a Masonic symbol. And there's a lot of other symbols. I've seen all-seeing eyes. There's Catholic churches that have the Illuminati all-seeing eye, you know, that's in the pyramid.
Well, speaking of the all-seeing eye, our local cable outlet, basically who helps us put on this show here, Time Warner in Austin, their symbol for their corporation is an eye. Isn't that kind of funny?
Yes, well, it all ties together. It's an enormous thing that's to someone who hasn't been initiated into, who hasn't studied this, the whole the subject is so vast and so incredible that it's really difficult to absorb. That's why I really strongly encourage someone to begin by reading the Bloodlines of the Illuminati book, where I have the time to lay things out systematically, so you can see that this thing started in antiquity. These people controlled everything back then. They never gave up control, although they have worked through trade guilds and the Masonic Lodge and other things. They've always had the power. They never gave up the power. And when this country was created, we thought that we were getting away from the aristocracies and the kings of Europe. But lo and behold, like I said, you know, I can document that 11 of our presidents are related to the royal family in the United Kingdom.
Boy, I tell you, Fritz, this all sounds so incredible, just like you said. When you were doing research for this book, how much documentation did you actually find which supports your outlook and beliefs on the Illuminati?
Well, I've done many years of research, and I was just joking with somebody that I was visiting this morning, because when I moved into my new house, I had been telling people I had 100 boxes of papers, you know, documentation, newspapers and stuff that I collected. But after I had filed those away, and I counted, I had 140 boxes left. So, a lot of what I have learned was because I've worked for years with people that are trying to escape the Illuminati, and they helped my learning curve greatly. They point me in the right direction. And a lot of information is right there if we scratch below the surface. But they realize that there are very few people like me that are going to be looking in the right direction and scratching under the surface. So, and they don't have time to hide it all. So there is an enormous amount of information out there that relates to these families. And I just am the type of person to plow through enormous amounts of information. That was just, I guess, the gift that God gave me.
So what you're saying then, basically, Fritz, is that the information is out there, and really all you have to do is begin to search for it. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that a lot of the readers, once they have read my Bloodlines of the Illuminati book, and then once they maybe have read some of the other books that I have and gotten a basic understanding of what's going on, they're going to start seeing these things all around them, and they can teach themselves, and they can further their understanding on their own without my help.
Okay, Fritz. Well, let's jump a little bit inside of the book, okay? I know you mentioned as one of the Illuminati families, the Kennedy family. Now, with all of their recent tragedy in the past few decades, how can you still feel like the Kennedys are major contributors to this whole power structure?
There's definitely been some power struggles, and the Kennedys have been on the short end of the power struggles. That's true. But after John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and his brother, Ted Kennedy still was an extremely powerful senator because of his tenure and all of the committees he was on and everything. He was one of the most powerful men in the United States. So that immediate family, you know, continues to be called by the news media as America's royal family. But let's understand that the Kennedy bloodline is far greater than just John F. Kennedy's family.
Well, what do you mean, Fritz? I think most people would, when they think of the Kennedys, they think, oh, well, you had John's father, Jack was it, and he made all his money. Basically, you hear rumors that he made most of his money through Prohibition, and then he made a killing off of the stock market crash. And really, that's when we start to hear about the Kennedys. Are you trying to tell me that they have a history that goes further back?
Yes, they have a history that goes way further back. In fact, the Kennedys are descendants from Brian Boru, who was the first Kennedy, and he was one of the most significant kings in European history. So you see that they're tied back to royalty. In fact, John F. Kennedy's sister married into British royalty. So these are just not commoners that grew up in a log cabin. But there's something that I would point out to our listeners out there in television land, and that is that the movers and shakers do not become rich and powerful and then join the Illuminati. They become rich and powerful because they are part of these Illuminati bloodlines, and their councils decide how they're going to divide up such things as the drug trade, monopolies, and things like this. And so when you see these families like the Astor family go from being totally poor, and in a few years John Jacob Astor is the richest man in North America, and maybe I'll use him as an example.
Okay.
Since I got started talking on him. John Jacob Astor came from Germany, from a small town, Waldorf. His background was being a butcher. He couldn't hardly speak any English. His English was broken. And he was the type of person that if you were sitting beside him eating, he might grab your shirt and wipe his dirty face on it while he was eating the meal. He was gross, he was crude. He was not somebody that you would enjoy being around. Yet this man who could barely speak English and who is an exceptionally obnoxious person, within a few years became the most richest man in America. Now, how did that happen? There had been fur trade for hundreds of years, but all of a sudden he comes to America and monopolizes the entire fur trade basically on North America. Now, how did he gain control? It's because somebody in the Illuminati councils had decided the Astor bloodline, which is a bloodline that goes back to antiquity, the name is a derivative of Astarte. They had decided that the Astor family, you know, would be given that privilege. Why did Bill Clinton become president? Somebody made the decision many years ago. You can look back at the things Bill popped off and said as he was a kid. He said, "I'm going to be president."
Okay, Fritz, well, we talked a little bit about the Kennedys, and I noticed that another Illuminati family that you mentioned in your bloodline book is the Onassis family. Now, as far back as I can remember, just out of recent memory, the only Onassis I could ever think of was Aristotle Onassis. And really the only reason I bring him up is because we talked about the Kennedys, and they seem to be linked a little bit. Could you briefly describe how the Onassis fit into this picture?
Onassis was, again, someone like John Jacob Astor. His family lived, Aristotle's father Socrates lived in Turkey, and at the end of World War I, the Turks committed genocide against the Greeks, and the Americans had a warship off of the coast, and very strange thing happened. I mean, you have millions of Greeks being killed, but for some reason this American warship sends a party of Marines ashore, and the one person they rescue is some obscure boy named Onassis. This is and the reason they give is because he had sold a bottle of liquor to the captain of the ship, and the captain of the ship had taken a liking to him. Well, that's a nice story. So then Onassis comes to South America. He lands in South America penniless in Argentina. But supposedly by washing dishes, within a few years, he's a multimillionaire, one of the richest people in the world.
From being a dishwasher?
Yeah. Some jobs like being a dishwasher. You know, you can see this kind of stuff in Back to the Future with Biff, you know. Yeah. And this is what we're talking about. So what I'm getting at is he became rich because he was in one of these bloodlines. How extensive is that bloodline? Who else is part of that bloodline? I don't know the full extent of that bloodline. I know that in working with people that were in that I brought out of the Illuminati, most of the people of these bloodlines do not have surnames that match the bloodline that they belong to. Their only major connection, so to speak, is when they are put before the Grand Dame, and she is to give her approval as to whether they're accepted into the Illuminati or not when they're like age 3, and they're given a physical inspection, just like the Masons don't want anybody who's got physical defects. And they're given an overall inspection, and in that initiation ceremony they will announce what bloodline they belong to. But then they will continue going through life with a plethora of other names.
Okay. Well, Fritz, after hearing you speak over the weekend, I think one of the best examples to help people kind of understand how the Illuminati control world events, could you kind of briefly describe some of the major events of the Illuminati-controlled World War II?
Oh, of World War II.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I'll focus on that. I might just mention to our audience, I could go back and essentially every war that there is, I could go through and show how these families have created them, manipulated them. Well, you can look at Wall Street, and the Illuminati families on Wall Street were the ones that financed Hitler to come to power. Also, you'll see that the Krupp family in Germany, plus a few other leading industrial Illuminati giants.
Now, you're talking about the Krupps that make the coffee machines. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm talking about the Krupps that make a lot more than coffee machines. I don't know how many thousands of factories they have today, but they were the ones that built the tanks and a lot of other, the locomotives and a lot of the other steel works that the Germans needed for their war machinery. And these people were the ones, well, one of them said, we've hired Hitler. So they viewed Hitler as their hireling. So American and German and British Illuminati financiers brought Hitler to power. So you had that aspect happening. And then the dialectics that was created that created the issues and how the war came about were also Illuminati family manipulations. And then the United States' entry into the war, let me point out something here. We haven't mentioned Freemasonry, but Freemasonry is the continuation of the mystery religions.
Okay.
And Freemasonry and the Illuminati are like a glove in a hand.
Well, hold on just a second, Fritz. I mean, I know some Freemasons. I even work with one, and I mean, he seems to be the most down-to-earth guy I've ever known. And as a matter of fact, if I even get to talking to politics too much about him, I feel kind of sort of that I even know a little bit more what's going on than him. How is he controlling the world?
Oh, he's just a member of a lodge system. We're talking, the lodge system needs a lot of good men at the base to support its structure. And 2/3 of the Freemasons don't go beyond the 3rd degree. They're that financial base supporting this pyramid structure. But at the top, we have these people. For instance, the Sinclair family, which is part of the 13th Illuminati family, they were given, if you'll look in Masonic Encyclopedia, you'll see that they're listed as having been given headship over the Freemasons, and that was something that was to be passed from generation to generation. So you'll see that these bloodlines are in control of Freemasonry, just like so many other things. The royal family of Britain has been at the top of Freemasonry in the United Kingdom. So it's not that every Freemason is in the Illuminati. It's that this is just one more system or lodge or secret society that's controlled by them, and Freemasonry just happens to be, has been in the past. It's no longer so much the powerful tool that it was in the past, but it's been one of their most powerful tools in the world for carrying out what their agenda.
Okay.
So let's see. Let's pick up where I was.
Back to World War II?
Back to World War II. The reason why I had to bring in the Freemasons is Stalin and Churchill and Roosevelt, who were the Allied leaders. They were all three Freemasons. And Churchill was of the Illuminati bloodlines, and so was Roosevelt. Stalin married into one of these prominent Kaganovich, if I'm pronouncing the Russian name right. He married into a prominent Illuminati bloodline. And in fact, you see in Russian politics that same family that Stalin was married to is still very powerful in Russian politics. But anyway, so you had three people that are controlling these countries, or at least are the visible political leaders of these countries that are all on the same team. And Germany and Japan and several other smaller countries that join them are arrayed against Russia and the United Kingdom. And the British wanted the Americans to enter the war. Roosevelt wanted us to enter the war. So,
but wasn't Roosevelt's one of his campaign promises at that time not to enter the European war?
Right, right. Just the same as Wilson. Before World War I, his campaign was he would keep us out of the war. And then very shortly after he became president, he declared war on Germany. And it was such a trauma to my grandfather, because he had voted for Wilson, that he never voted Democrat again in his life. He had such a strong reaction. He had a knee-jerk reaction. He always voted Republican after that. But yeah, that was a campaign promise. But see, these people, they say whatever it takes to be popular, and then they do whatever they want, because we don't mean anything to them. And so, in going back and researching, I came across a book that was written which described aircraft carrier warfare in the Pacific in a war between Japan and the United States before there was ever an aircraft carrier built. And this book describes basically World War II. So this is rather amazing that someone was already thinking this stuff out. And then you'll see that when one studies it out, that the American military brought the Japanese Navy over to Pearl Harbor and specifically showed them item by item how the Pearl Harbor could be attacked. And then on the basis of that, those tours, the Japanese went back, made up their battle plans. American intelligence and British intelligence knew of the battle plans. They watched the Japanese fleet practice for their attack on Pearl Harbor. And then Roosevelt, to make sure that there was a lot of losses, the day before they attacked, he had all of our planes put on the airfields in circles with their noses pointed towards the center of the circle, so that it'd be very hard for them to take off when the Japanese attacked. There was a lot of things like this that were done to make sure that there was a lot of Americans that died so that they could get United States into the war. You know, I could talk for hours about how they created this war and then how they kept it going. The Illuminati, well, shortly after Pearl Harbor, President Roosevelt, and I showed the documentation in my talk here in Austin from the federal codes. He drew up an executive decree which allowed the Secretary of the Treasury, Morgenthau, to exempt whoever he wanted so that they could trade with the enemy. So these Illuminati families, like the Rockefellers, who controlled Standard Oil, and Onassis, were given the freedom to trade with the Germans so that they could keep the Germans supplied with essentials like diamonds there's a lot of industrial uses for diamonds, including they were needed for the gyroscopes and the gyroscopes for the V-2 rockets and everything. They supplied Germany with oil, designs for military equipment, and a lot of other things that, had the Illuminati not been given that special privilege of continuing to trade with Germany during the war would have come to an end easily by 1942.
So basically, we had an embargo on Germany if we wanted to, but we just never closed the embargo. Or we just never kept the supplies from coming into the country?
Well, if you were one of these Illuminati bloodlines, one of these powerful men, kingpins is the word I use within these Illuminati bloodlines, you had the privileged status of being above the war.
Above the war.
The rest of us, it was a real war.
And actually, Fritz, I think I can remember from your book, as from the Onassis chapter, his fleet of ships almost went unscathed, is that correct?
Totally unscathed. They were never attacked.
How many ships did he have?
It was between 200 and 300 ships, merchant ships.
And he's from the Greek fleet, correct?
Yeah,
Greek merchant ships.
His ships flew the Greek flag. Essentially, every other Greek ship that was floating when the war started was sunk. But his ships went in all of the theaters of the war, the Mediterranean, the North Sea, and they were never attacked by either side. It took collaboration at the highest levels for him to travel around in a world war without anybody bothering him, while he made millions, perhaps billions of dollars off of the whole thing.
This is incredibly fascinating. I tell you what, Fritz, we're almost running out of time here, but before we do, I would like you to briefly touch on, I know you mentioned it earlier, how the Bush family has been coming into prominence here of late. Could you give us maybe a little bit more of a background behind that family?
Some of our listeners out there may be familiar with the Order of the Skull and Bones, which is a chapter of the Illuminati, and that they have rituals with satanic undertones. One of the things that they do is lay in a pile of manure when they're being initiated and say all of their sexual exploits. Yeah, I know. Satan causes his minions to do degrading things that they think, for some reason, because their minds get warped, that this is something great. The Bush family is related, it's one of those families that's related back to British royalty. Mm-hmm. And Bush was head of the CIA. And I think it's significant to point out, if our listeners haven't caught it already, they may have already noticed this themselves, but you had the head of the KGB. You know, the KGB has been running Russia and the USSR, and over here we had the head of the CIA, George Bush, who becomes president, and now his son is running. It should make people realize that at least that the intelligence agencies have co-opted these countries, but it's deeper than that, because the intelligence agencies are being used as a front for these powerful families. And there's literature out there that talks about how the intelligence agencies have been prostituted to these powerful families. In fact, KGB intelligence, a large share of their intelligence, is simply being used to spy on Western industry and companies so that they can take all these trade secrets back for Russian capitalists, or Russian gangsters, I should say.
Wow, truly incredible. Also, Fritz, I remember this also from your talks over the weekend. I don't want people to think that you're like the only person out there talking about it, and not just today, but I mean throughout history. I remember you mentioned how Senator McCarthy, most people think out there that McCarthy was just afraid of communists, but it's really, from your research, Fritz, do you really think that was the case?
No, it wasn't the case. I mean, I was like everybody else. I only knew what I'd been told until I started reading speeches and talks and things that he had written, and I was blown away. I realized the man knew exactly that there were these powerful families, that there was a world order, and he was going after these powerful families. That's why he went after the Bundys, and of course the Illuminati kingpins in our government thwarted an investigation into Bundy. Yeah, he really understood, and so because he was after these powerful people, these movers and shakers, they have used him as a verbal punching bag. I mean, I've watched, I don't know how many people denegate his name, even, you know, in the last few years. I mean, you think the guy has been dead for a long time, they'd forget him, but Bill Clinton has used him as a punching bag, and then George Bush. So
it's almost, the Illuminati almost use him as an example. Like, if you come after us, this is what's going to happen to you. Isn't that correct?
Yes, yes.
That's totally horrible. Well, I know we've just got a few minutes left now, for sure. But before we go, I wanted to ask you, Fritz, how can we, as normal, everyday people, recognize perhaps the policies or the agendas which are pushed on us through the Illuminati front organizations?
Oh boy, that's a good question, but it's also a big question. Well, you will see that there are certain things that are politically correct. And you will also notice that the world is going towards central control.
Right.
It's going towards globalization, where we're having the United Nations. You know, the United Nations was formed out of the League of Nations, and there's a continual push to have one political, one world government.
Now, isn't that just a natural evolution of perhaps human society? I mean, as the world seems to be getting smaller and smaller through technology, most people would say that would just be a natural evolution of our whole government system.
Well, it's definitely being pushed. And whether one wants to believe that it's a natural outgrowth of improved communication and transportation, that's up to the individual, but it is definitely being pushed. It's taking a lot of money and a lot of effort to make it happen, and the push behind it are these global elite families that are controlling things from behind the scenes. So not only do we have political globalization, but we have economic globalization, and we have religious globalization. So when you see any kind of an agenda that contributes to this one world order, or as Bush has called it, New World Order, or, you know, Hitler, who was also of these bloodlines, also referred to New World Order. That seems to be a popular term with them.
Right, and I noticed earlier, when you had mentioned it, you just said World Order, that you didn't put the new in there. Why is that?
Because it's not new at all. In fact, they keep using the same formulas. The things that controlled people back in ancient Rome, you know, where they had bread and circus, they're using the same formulas that they used in antiquity on us today. And bread and circus simply means that if you give the common person entertainment and plenty of food, like the junk food we get, they'll be happy. And most people, as long as they have their beer and their football game, are happy.
Unfortunately, that is true. Well, I tell you what, Fritz, I really appreciate you coming down here, taking time out of your busy schedule to come give us an interview, and I look forward to having more talks with you in the future.
Thank you. It's great being with you.
And you get them are prepared for the New World Order. They've been preparing people for many years, and it's almost here. It's almost here.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea. A new world order. Order.
First heard about Johnny Todd in March of 1974, though I was not given his name at the time. I was talking with Jack Chick, the author of the comic book publications like Broken Cross, the Crusader series, and some of the little pamphlets like Big Daddy and G.I. Joe and This Was Your Life and The Thing, a number of very effective comic book type gospel tracts, which have reached a circulation, I believe, of more than 3 million copies. And God has wonderfully blessed Jack Chick's ministry. Jack Chick called me in March of 1974 about a certain subject and mentioned the fact that he had just met a converted Druid priest who was saved out of Druidism, which is a very high level of witchcraft. And he told me that this particular converted priest knew personally of more than 50 to 60 cases of human sacrifice perpetrated in this country. Now, at that time, Johnny Todd's name was not given to me. Then about the last of May or 1st of June of this year, just about 5 or 6 months ago, about 5 months ago, Jack Chick called me again, not remembering who I was because we had not met personally, and began to tell me about this man named Johnny Todd who was converted out of witchcraft. And then I reminded him of the conversation we had about 3.5 years before in March of 1974, and I asked if Johnny Todd were the same man he referred to as a converted Druid priest in 1974. He said, yes, Johnny Todd is the man. Well, I've had several occasions to talk with Johnny Todd, and I know that Johnny Todd knows what he's talking about when he talks about witchcraft and other occult organizations. The Lord Jesus Christ saved Johnny Todd out of witchcraft 5 years ago, and I have personally talked with Johnny Todd on the basis of Jack Chick's recommendation. Having known Johnny Todd now for more than 4 years, and my having known him for some 6 months, I believe that Johnny Todd is a genuinely converted man, saved by the grace of God out of the depths of Satanism. And without taking any more of his time, Johnny, you have until 5 minutes till 10. And is your watch one of those good ones? Keep time. I have 15 after now. Okay, God bless you, Johnny Todd.
Thank you. Before I start today, I'd like to leave a text with everybody. I try to leave it across the country. When I was saved, I knew absolutely nothing about the Bible except some basic teaching that I had picked up by accident when I was about 10 years old in a Nazarene church. When the people that I was being raised by that were in witchcraft found out that I had went to this church, they, as they say, blew their stack. And that was that for going and hearing anything about the Word of God. So everything I know about the Bible I've learned in the last 5 years. I had some very, very good teachers in San Antonio, a man named Jack Taylor, a Southern Baptist pastor. And when I told him, it was like 2 days after I was saved, the things that I had come out of and was afraid of and so on, he gave me this scripture as kind of my battle cry text, whatever, throughout the walk and the ministry that I would have later. And I've left it with Christians because in a day and age when we see so much happening around us, we lose sight of who's behind what is happening around us. We lose sight that if it is good and positive, it's the Lord, and if it's evil and rebellious, it's the devil. And a lot of times we look at our teenage children and we think that they're the devil, and the teenage children look at the parents and think they're the devil. And we lose sight of really who our enemy is in this warfare that we're in. So I'd like to leave this with you. I'm sure many of you know it, and if you don't, I recommend that you mark it in your Bible and learn it by heart. Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. I didn't bring my Amplified with me today. I was a little rushed as I was late. But the Amplified gives a much clearer description of it. So many times we see political corruption and things going on, and these are a few things that I'm going to discuss today. But we lose sight of who's behind that political corruption. We looked at Nixon's era. We look at some of the things that Jimmy Carter's doing today, and we know they're not Christian deeds. We know that they have nothing to do with the Lord, but we kind of scratch them off to the man. We should scratch them off to the enemy, and the man is not the enemy. I came out of a family that was, you know, how many of you were raised Baptist? We'll start that way. All your life, that's what you were raised from the time you were a little child, a Baptist. How many of you were raised in a Christian home? Okay. Now, so in the Pentecostal churches, which I try to avoid as much as possible, they have a term called homegrown Pentecostal. I guess homegrown Baptist would be just as fashionable. Well, I was a homegrown witch. From the time that I was 5 years old, I knew nothing but witchcraft. I would have known it sooner, but they didn't discuss it with me. They take you very, very young. And even before they start talking about the so-called positive aspects of witchcraft, they talk about the negative aspects of Christianity. So that being a Christian is a miracle, not because I want it out of witchcraft, but that I would consider Christianity the only way out. Because they brainwash you from very early childhood that the Christian is the most evil being or creature in the universe. That he wants nothing more than to take the everyday witch out and shoot them, burn them, hang them, whatever he can do, and that they are the most hateful beings that ever existed, on the same level as maybe Adolf Hitler. So this is what I was raised up to believe. And my last name is Todd, but that was just changed about 60 years ago. Until then, our name was Collins. And the Collins family, my direct tree, was responsible, according to witchcraft history and a few history books that I can find also, with bringing witchcraft to the United States. So when I was 14, and some of you might consider that a very early age, but it wasn't. It was kind of a late age for this. I was initiated into organized witchcraft. In other words, I was made what Brother Rasmussen is. I was made a pastor, a minister. I was ordained. In fact, a few years later, when I went to enlist in the service, I didn't have to go because I was draft exempt, because I was the ordained minister of a legal recognized church. So, 4D status for a few people who know what that is. I'm sure Brother Rasmussen does. Ordained ministers are exempt. And I enlisted and went through the service until I got into a little shooting incident in Germany. After I'd come back from Vietnam, I'd re-enlisted and went to Germany. And I was getting ready to be court-martialed. In fact, I had everything down pat. I was as good as gone. We had entered a plea of guilty for a deal of 35 years and then parole, and they wouldn't even consider it. An officer had been killed in the situation, and I was more or less just waiting to be transferred to Leavenworth to serve the time when Witchcraft Church, which I thought was just a little group of people that I belonged to, sent a political member of that church, a state senator, two of them, state senator, a U.S. senator, and a representative over to Germany, and they took hold of the situation, and 24 hours later I was a civilian in the United States with all my time, rank, and an honorable discharge, and my court-martial records didn't exist anymore. And all of a sudden I realized I wasn't in something that just lit candles and incense and said magic words once in a while and stuck pins in dolls. There was a little more to it than just a religion. And I left New Jersey and went home to Columbus, and I asked my real mother, I have two mothers, I have a foster mother and a real mother, I asked my real mother what I was to do, and she said, here's an envelope with $2,000 and a one-way ticket to New York City. You get there on the next plane and I'll tell them you're coming. She didn't tell me who she was going to tell was coming or anything. But I flew to New York City and I spent 6 months learning all new witchcraft. Till then I had been taught what most of the teenagers learn. And I want to tell the teenagers something here real quick. I'm sure most of you probably go to the school here. But if you were in a regular school, you would meet witches running all over the place. We hear this across the country. Almost every high school has it, especially in California. And they tell the young people lies. They tell them it's ESP. They tell them it's psychic power. They tell them it's spirits of the dead. They tell them everything but what it is. And I was supposed to be a high priest leading a church that had 13 ministers to it, plus a couple hundred people in his congregation. And I believed this. And then all of a sudden, for 6 months, this man, Dr. Buckland, unraveled everything and told me there was a one God, where before we believed there was four, There was one, and his name was Lucifer. And he was very quickly to tell me that wasn't Satan. He didn't want me to get in the ideas that Christians could be telling me the truth. I should have thought then that if they had lied to me for almost 18 years, they were probably lying to me now. But I went ahead and believed it. For 6 months I took lessons in witchcraft that I didn't even know that things could happen that had happened. And then I was transferred to Los Angeles, good old L.A. Can't seem to get away from it. And for 6 months, my foster mother taught me something that your pastor is very familiar with, the political situation of the occult. And all of a sudden I realized that witchcraft wasn't just spell casting, it had a purpose in mind. And that's when I started getting a little afraid, because when I was 10, as I said, I learned a little about the Bible. It just happened to be all revelations that I learned. And all of a sudden we were discussing a world ruler that would be personally guided by Lucifer, that could gain control of the world supernaturally and take control of people's minds. Of course, they didn't say there was a defense against this. The way they spoke, everybody was affected. They didn't say anything about the blood of Jesus. But we sat there, and for 6 months I learned the political structure and the history of witchcraft. And then I was taken to Colorado, and I was placed through an initiation into the sixth realm. And this initiation consisted of a blood sacrifice. And from then on I was given a territory of 13 states. This didn't happen to be one of them. This belonged to my foster mother. But I was in charge of all the occult, political, and drug activity in 13 states. And this is where I was in 1972 when I met the Lord. Well, I, at first, for many years, said by accident, but I've come to realize there's no such thing as an accident when it comes to Jesus. He had everything perfectly planned out. But it was a combination of a personal witness to a coffee house, a Jack Chick Publications tract, and the movie The Cross and the Switchblade. And a lot of things that, for instance, one Baptist church praying and fasting that I would get saved. They figured if I got saved, maybe the rest of the witches would follow in suit. It didn't exactly happen that way, but it did put a dent in the situation. So that's quickly, very quickly, my testimony. What I want to do today is, for the young people and the adults here, I'd like to throw this thing open to question and answer. Because some of you may have run across situations, some of you may have questions on how to deal with people that are in this. I want to leave one word with you. The only answer to witchcraft, the only way that anybody's ever succeeded in getting out, has been through the blood of Christ. Everybody else who's ever tried to get out of witchcraft, and I want to leave this with you, witchcraft is real and supernatural. I remember the minister who witnessed to me said that until he found his daughter in it, he was always, and he was a Baptist pastor, was always raised to believe that witches were fables that flew around on broomsticks on Halloween night. And all of a sudden he woke up and found it was very real. And if you want to find out the power behind it and how it can be defeated, I suggest the 16th chapter of Acts. Paul handled it very nicely. And it's one thing that I can testify to all the teenagers considering the lies that you're born with witchcraft, which is the lie that they give you. When I was saved, and the pastors there at the Baptist church called the demons that were inside me out, I lost all that power of witchcraft. I've never regretted it. If the power came from demons, I don't need the demons. So before you teenagers start fooling around with the astrology charts and the Ouija board, check out the 18th chapter of Deuteronomy and find out you'll pick up a demon from doing it. And you pick up one, you keep on going. My foster mother wrote a book, and she said, doing one spell or practicing one seance in witchcraft is like jumping off of a tall mountain or a skyscraper. There's no turning back. It is the strongest addiction that I know. Dave Wilkerson said that he had seen people go through withdrawal from drugs many times, but seeing one witch go through withdrawal from the occult shattered his mind. And I've helped thousands of people through withdrawal from witchcraft and withdrawal from drugs. And once you've seen the withdrawal that a person goes through from being in witchcraft, you'll think that drugs is something you practiced in kindergarten. It's that violent and that destructive without Christ especially. And what I started to say was, nobody has ever succeeded in getting away because they simply will kill you with a spell. Now, Brother Rasmussen knows from testimony from other people who have been around, they haven't been able to do this to me or anybody else that has ever gotten out. A few people had been killed physically that have gotten out, that were Christians, that got out of witchcraft. And they've tried this with me and my wife and so on, but they've never succeeded, and we're still very, very much alive. But we have to depend totally upon Jesus to stay in that situation. Now, before any of the young people decide that witchcraft's a groovy thing, they will tell you you can get out anytime you want. But once you're in, there's a bounty on your head should you ever leave. And I don't care if you're 13 or 14 years old, the bounty starts at $10,000, and they send a professional. They don't send an everyday person. If you're wondering why I'm still alive, it isn't easy. I've got the bullet holes in the buildings and the bombed-out buildings and everything else, the record, and I stand that Jesus kept us alive in every situation. You don't walk into a building as it blows up in your face and walk back out without a scratch on you unless the Lord is there to protect you. And this occult is very dangerous. Chick Publications did The Broken Cross, which will be on sale back here today. The only tract that I know of that has saved people out of witchcraft. And they did this book, and because of it, they moved to another building with bulletproof glass and bomb-proof walls. That's the situation. The artist draws his stories at home now in a dwelling that they don't know where he is, rather than try and drive to work and be in danger. And Jack, his staff is always on him to be more careful because they're trying to drive him off the road and stuff. We try to get him to drive a Cadillac that might stand up a little, but he says the Lord can protect him in his Toyota as well as a Cadillac, so he keeps on driving the Toyota. But that's the situation. It is no joke. It is a serious situation. The occult gives up less people to conversion than any other thing. And it's not because they don't want out. They desperately want out. We went to Minneapolis to where they had a convention. We took 10,000 of the Broken Cross there to distribute free, and they were so afraid of this book coming, they canceled the convention, rather than let it fall in the hands of the people who would be coming from across Europe and across the United States to attend. But people came into our meetings there that came anyway, and they listened, and when they were done, they asked my wife and myself and other ministers, if you can put us in a safe place of protection, we'll come out. They want out. They know that Christianity is the only way, but they're physically afraid to come out. You think the mafia has fear, for those that have been watching The Godfather or something? It holds no fear compared to the occult people coming after you. But we are believing that we will have this situation. Brother Rasmussen will be one of the few people in the United States who will know how to get converts to the refuge that we're preparing. So we're preparing a place not for them to go permanently and hide, but for them to grow in the Word and in physical strength so they can go out on their own and live. And Jack Chick will be putting in the back of all his publications on the occult the phone numbers of the different things, and you'll be one of the phone numbers that people can reach and say, we have a convert that's been won out of the occult. How do we get him to this refuge place? And he will be one of the few people in the United States that will know where this place is in the mountains. It'll be that well guarded. So we just ask your prayers and your questions now if you've got some. Yeah. Well, 12 years old girls are big, more or less. They've been known to get down to 10, but they usually start at 12 or 13 and go to 25. And for the people who like to hitchhike, this is how they pick them all up. And of course, the police will just tell the parents the kids run away from school. They use them for sexual and for sacrifice, human sacrifice purposes. For those that are wondering if that is an accident, you're in LA County here, right? The LA County Sheriff's Department has a very secret undercover thing. I don't even know if you can find out if it exists, but I talked to them. It's called the Occult Squad. They told me in '73 that they found 35 bodies of girls in Los Angeles County that year, and I talked to them in December, that they knew to be human sacrifice, which they listed as rape cases to keep it from the public. The statistics that came in so far this year are close to 125, and the year's not even over. Now that's girls that have been used for human sacrifice. And if you'll notice, there's quite a few rape cases that happened around Halloween that are in the news right now. And from what we can find out, the circumstances that each death fit human sacrifice. But you'll never hear it, that's the reason. We turned in 4 different people that were responsible in the area that I knew about to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and they arrested all 4. They got convictions, and in every conviction they listed it as rape, killing. And they knew better. Yes. Yes, it is. It's listed in the 18th chapter of Deuteronomy as converting with necromancy or familiar spirits, clairvoyancy, anything that is psychic is a counterfeit of God's power by the devil. And it was, okay, the woman who was giving fortunes in the 16th chapter of Acts, that was clairvoyancy. When Paul cast the demon out, she couldn't tell fortunes anymore. That settles it right there. Yeah. Superstition is a Christian form of witchcraft. Okay? Okay, she asked me if superstition was a form of witchcraft. It's a Christian form of witchcraft. One thing I want to throw at the young people real quick. In the occult stores, they don't sell Ouija boards, in most of them, in the serious ones. They call it a Christian instrument. They say Christians are the only ones stupid enough to use it. Witches know that the devil runs it. They know more than some of the Christians. Yeah. Okay. You want an answer on that? Oh, I'm glad you asked me about that. Yes, I do. Physical evidence. One, take the exorcism first. The rite that the Catholic Church uses for exorcism, they have changed a few words. Just, I think, about 6 words. Is the witchcraft rite of exorcism. It is 8,000 years old. The Catholic Church is not that old. Okay? Next, on the apparitions, it's the same thing as the Spiritualist Church of America or any of the witchcraft organizations. It's called auras. And if you'll notice, none of them are pure white. Now, coming out of the occult, I know the system of collars. And the principality, there's 7 of them. And all the demons under them go by the collar of their leader, their generals. And the occult demon, Regia, appears as a blue snake or a blue mist. I've heard thousands of reports, including Jean Dixon, that her guides, her spirit guides, familiar spirits, are blue in nature when they communicate with her. And, of course, the red is lust and so on. It's a long list. But the saints or apparitions, I want to get into this thing real quick. The Catholic Church's altar, except for the Atame or the knife, is the exact altar of witchcraft. And according to the reports I can get on the Nicene Council, most of the ministers at the Nicene Council that set that heresy up were from the Temple of Diana, which is witchcraft. So, everything, the bell, the incense, the whole ritual, their holy water is a salt water mixture. This comes from witchcraft, which they do exorcism with. Everything that they do comes out of witchcraft, and they can't get around it. Yeah. Okay. Did everybody hear that question? Okay. He wants me to explain the Council of 13. I'll explain what that is, if you were probably wondering. And what their purpose or thrust is. Okay. All right. If you'll all, just give you a second, reach in your billfold. You can put it in the offering plate later. Reach in your billfold and take out a $1 bill real quick. We'll settle the whole thing. I'll let you ask your federal government later how this got on the $1 bill. Okay. On the back of the $1 bill, you'll see the crest with the pyramid in it. Now, Dr. Rasmussen has upstairs the whole crest. You only have the words left out of it on the blocks. But there are sections. His is a little behind time. There's a few new organizations. His dates back to the 1800s. But that pyramid in the Illuminati consists of 3 pyramids and a sphinx. But their crest is this crest. The Illuminati is the occult organization that we belong to. It means the light bearers. The witches call it Mariah, the conquering wind. But it's the capstone above. The eye is Lucifer. The triangle of the capstone is the tribunal of the Rothschild family, which is called the Holy Family. They lead the Illuminati. They would be Paul, Peter, for the Catholics, all the saints and Mary and everybody rolled into one, and the Pope. They are the voice. The doctrine of the occult teaches that Lucifer comes and sits at their dining room table. When they see the table, they leave 13 chairs out, and the 13th one is for Lucifer to sit in himself. They set him a plate and everything. Now, I've been there in the mansion, and I've seen this go on. And they, in turn, direct to the top block of that pyramid. And that top block is the Council of 13 of the Grand Druid Council, which I was a member of. Now, the Druid system of government is not that the politicians run everything. It is the same system that Rome had. The priests let whoever wants to rule the government, but the priest must rule the ruler. Now, I'll let that sink on you for a while. And I want to throw this in. It will cause a lot of controversy, I'm sure, but it's a fact. Since the time of Woodrow Wilson, including him, there has never been a president of the United States that was not an Illuminati, that did not belong. Now, that'll shatter a few people's ideas about a Christian president right now, but it's a fact anyway. And the Grand Druids, although they're just supposedly everyday people like me, you look at me now, I'm this way. I was a different way when I was in witchcraft. And part of my authority was whatever governors, senators, or political people were in my area took direct political orders from me, which I in turn did not think up, but simply translated to them from the orders that we got from London, from the Rothschild family. Now that's the Council of 13. The thrust is that when I left in 72, they had a chart that said in 8 years, they would have the whole world. And from remembering that chart, I haven't seen one thing through the news media not happen on schedule according to that chart. I would say that that's about right. I would say the word today would be Maranatha, that he's coming real quick, because theirs is coming real quick. They have it. It's not that far away. Okay. Yeah. It'd be easier to give you the names who aren't. About 99%. Okay? The man who pulled me out of jail became an attorney general under Ford. It was William Saxby. Well, that gives you 2 names to start with. The best way is to find out who belongs to the CFR or who belongs to the CFR. Yeah. Not the way it's been written. It's a little ridiculous. I know I'm going to step on a few people's toes who have read about the Illuminati, but he asked me what part Zionism played in the Illuminati. Rothschild and a few people in the Illuminati were born Jews, but they're not Jews. You can get in the Word of God and find it. I think we got a little bit. The system is this. With the same books that proclaim that the Illuminati is a Jewish organization also proclaim that the Illuminati is a Luciferian organization. You can't have both. A true Jew believes in Yahweh. An Illuminati person, and I'm not a Jew, and I was a leader of the Illuminati, believes in Lucifer, the God of light, peace, love, blah, 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 and so on. It has nothing to do with the same, because there might be a few Jews born, and they might have some ties with Zionism, bloodline, but the organization itself has nothing to do with Judaism at all. It is totally 100% Druid occult, and that's its purpose. In fact, the reason that the Rothschilds even still reside in London is because England is considered to the witches the same as Palestine is considered to us. It is the Holy Land. You take pilgrimages there. You stop off and kiss the stones on the Rothschild mansion for luck, and so on and so forth. If by some chance you happen to meet a Rothschild and he gives you a blessed sign or a blessed bee, then your whole life is set. It's that type of nature. But it has nothing to do. There is an interesting thing, though, I'd like to throw in. A lot of witches do wear the thing called the Star of David. David was long dead before that star was ever drawn. His son drew it. And it's called the hexagram, and the word to curse or to hex comes from the hexagram. And when witches practice magic, they draw a 5-pointed star to stand in, and they call demons up in the evil sign, what we call the Star of David. So before Christians start tying it around their neck, that's called the demon star, or the Death Star. And that's why it was drawn. For a few people that might be confused about the Solomon aspect, when he backslid, he became the most holiest person in the occult. Everything that we practice are based upon books that he wrote and pictures that he drew. when he backslid. Well, including that exorcism rite you asked about, he wrote it. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll give you an Okay, she asked if they're behind witchcraft programs that are coming on. I'm going to give you two quick examples. For one, I'm telling this across the country, the most disastrous film that has ever come out, pro-witchcraft, thousands of people that are Christians are going to go watch and are watching. I was told by a bunch of Christian people across the United States in every city I went to, you got to go see this movie. There's no sex, there's no violence, there's, you know, it's just an old kind of, how would you put it, I can't think of the guy in the 30s that was a sequence in outer space movies, Flash Gordon type picture. So I went and watched it. It used words and beliefs that are the innermost beliefs in witchcraft. They're not even the ones spoken of in the open. And witches don't call it witchcraft. They call it the Force. It's called Star Wars. And the whole thing is centered around, 2/3 of the movie is based on the Force. That you're stronger when you die, you're reincarnated, you receive guides from people who are dead. It's ESP. See, the biggest line about witchcraft is that it's not bad. It's neither good nor bad. It's the person that's good or bad. And this movie emphasized that a lot. That witchcraft was okay as long as you were a good person. So, adults, before you let them go. And the other one I want to hit real quick is, how many remember Bewitched? It's probably one of the main reasons that witchcraft grew, it and Dark Shadows. Bewitched was written by a witch. The belief of witchcraft is you're born a witch, and that the mortals, or everyday people who don't practice, are dummies. You remember that in the thing? Well, they never got into, it was more of a comedy, they never got into witches' ceremonies or Sabbaths or anything like that. Last night a person asked me to watch who had gotten to read the script of the new one, Tabitha. So I watched it. It had witchcraft all through it. Real witchcraft. Ceremonies, Halloween, everything. They're coming out stronger now. You better watch what your kids turn on the TV set. There hasn't been a witchcraft movie that had anything to do with Satan in the last 5 years that Satan didn't win openly in the picture. Tabitha? Bewitched. I know. I know. I've got reports on it. I was in witchcraft back then. I know what was going on. Yeah. Wasn't there a woman who had a lot to do with the show by the name of Louise Huebner? That's my foster mother. Yeah. What now? Usually through the Illuminati name's not used much anymore, except by everyday people who find out about it. Witches don't use it. The organization doesn't use it. And each country has its... the Mariah is the occult part, and the political part has a name in each country. And the United States is called the Council of Foreign Relations. That's mainly how they got into it. They mainly got into it because you can't become a president. You may think you elect a president, but I'm here to tell you, you elect whoever they put up. And when I was saved in 72, I got on a television broadcast that went throughout southern Texas, New Mexico, and so on. And they still got the tape down. It was on a talk show called the 7 Club in the morning. And I had a minister from the church there with me, Ed Human. And they asked me the political aspect that would be happening. Now, this was the election of Nixon and McGovern at the time. And I said a few things I don't want to really get into right now because we don't have the time. But one of the things I said was that the last election that would happen, the next one that was coming up, the one that just happened, the president that would be elected would be the last president elected in the United States. That doesn't mean it'll be the last election. It just means he'll be the last president. And that when he was elected, he was so important to be elected that the person who would run against him would also be Illuminati. That they wouldn't allow anybody else to get the nomination from the other party. And that he would purposely do everything during his campaign, the other party, in this case Ford, to throw that election. And if you'll look back on it, I think you'll see things that he did that lost many, many votes. And then he almost won anyway. I think it would have been disastrous if he had won to them, not to us. Yeah. That's what I'm saying, yeah. We have talked with Reagan's son and other people, and they have told us of violent threats, bribes, death threats, assassination attempts, and everything that never reached the news media that went on during the nomination thing for the Republican Party. Yes. It ain't easy. I've got a first grader that went to school, and every day she came home, she said, "Daddy, here it is, throw it in the trash can during the Halloween season. The goblins, the ghosts, the witches, the stuff they cut out." She understood. She says, "Oh, well, Thanksgiving and Christmas is coming up." She understood. Halloween had absolutely nothing to do with Christianity. Christians shouldn't even touch it with a 10-foot pole. It comes from the word shaman, which means the day the dead come back and talk. It was invented by witches, capitalized on by the Catholics, but nothing in it has to do with Christians. Nothing. Who wants to celebrate a day that witches sacrificed thousands of people throughout the world on? Yes. White magic and black magic is a Catholic term. When they were burning people at the stake for being witches, they wanted to protect themselves that practiced it. So they invented the term white witchcraft or white magic and black magic. Witches, in their books, will tell you that it doesn't exist, as it was mentioned in Star Wars. And yet, when they're trying to convert a Christian, they will say they're white witch and not a black witch. And yet they'll tell you in their books it doesn't exist, which means they'll say anything to convert you. But there is no such thing. The devil is evil, and you can't whitewash him or anything he does. You can call it ESP, but it's still witchcraft. Yeah. Hypnosis is of the devil. Plain and simple. Yeah. Charismatic realm. Theirs is feeling and not word. I go into charismatic churches and speak, I know. And I want to tell you something. They can't understand why they have no young people. They can't understand why the young people are practicing witchcraft. It's because they've never been taught the word. They've been trying to give a form of discipline without love, strong discipline, no love to go with it, and no word, just emotion. And then they wonder why somebody is saved 3 months and then in the world 3 months later. A good example of this is Melody Land. It's got to probably be one of the worst churches in Calvary Chapel in the United States. Because it gives absolutely, they have a whole Bible college. They teach nothing but emotion and theory. They don't teach the Word. Well, as long as you, one thing real quick here. Satanists believe in Satan. Witches do not, and there is a difference. Witches are taught that Satan and hell is a lie. I was saved for hours before I ever knew there was a devil. I concentrate on the Scripture. I concentrate on the 16th chapter of Acts and the Ephesians 6:12, the 18th chapter of Deuteronomy. Please don't quote, we suffer a witch to die. Please don't quote that to them. They scare them to death. But work on the love and work on the Scripture, but leave the devil and hell out of it if they're a witch. How much? Certain groups use it. Other groups don't touch it. Okay? In fact, it's capital punishment to touch it, the death sentence. But some use it, but they twist it. They take it out of context.
Stay here just a moment, Johnny. During the preaching service, which will start in about 5 minutes, I'm going to be preaching a message on the real cure for witchcraft and all bondage. And we invite you to stay for that. Then at 11:15, Johnny Todd will speak again in this building, and we'll have him continue from where he has left off, so that he will not be repeating himself. If you can ask more questions, so if you'll just stay through the preaching service at 11:15, the second Sunday school session will start, and Johnny Todd will continue from the point of having left off. But first, I'd like to ask just a couple of questions. Johnny, a few years ago, I became interested in the subject of Freemasonry, and I'm wondering, is the witchcraft initiation anything like the Masonic initiations?
First level witchcraft and first level Masonry initiation is identical. The only difference is that my wrist was cut and I signed a blood pact, and that I was nude and they are clothed. That's the only difference. The words, the acts, the tying, the blindfold, the charge, everything, even the pledge of secrecy is exactly the same. There's no difference. And the sixth level initiation of witchcraft blood sacrifice is the same initiation to the highest level of Masonry, the 35th. It's called the Rite of the Warrior on the Block.
35th degree.
The 31st degree, which most of our politicians are 35th degree Masons. Yeah. Whoa. There's no such thing as a warlock. If you're witnessing to a witch, please, unless it's a Satanist, please call them a wizard or a witch. If you've got to call them anything except idiot. Well, that's true. I was an idiot. I mean, anybody that's done it is. But go ahead, finish your question. They don't believe in hell. They believe when they die, they will come back in another life. Okay?
In other words, it's deception. All right. Remember again, Johnny Todd will speak here again at 11:15. So,
after a year's worth of training, initiated to the sixth level or Grand Druid position of witchcraft, I sat on a council of 13 people that take orders only from the Rothschild Tribunal in London, which they claim they take their orders directly from Lucifer. And that's why they reside. Somebody's asking me if some of the Rothschilds lived in California. Not those directly related to the tribunal. They won't leave England. Some live in France, but they always come over to England because they believe that England is the place that Lucifer is most fluent and can speak to them more in person than he could anywhere else. And from talking to Christians in England, they estimate there's only 2% of the population are Christians in the Great Britain country. So they have quite a fluent time over there. In fact, some friends of mine just brought pictures back of where they're building homes with broomstick poles coming out of the chimney for the witch spirits to land on to bless their homes. These aren't ignorant people. These are the new $1 million mansions that are going up. It's not just a superstition. The country has really gone back to witchcraft. It was originally total witchcraft. So this is the atmosphere I came out of. I was saved in Labor Day of '72 in San Antonio through a movie, Across from the Switchblade, a coffee house ministry that belonged to a Baptist church there, and then later deliverance through that Baptist church. I've been ministering with people in the occult, and in the last year, my main ministry has been to Christians playing with the occult. And we're going to demonstrate that in a minute here.
Union Banking Corporation was liquidated by the U.S. government, and Prescott Bush received $1.5 million for his holdings in his Nazi business, and that was the beginning of the Bush family fortune for all intents and purposes. George Bush takes his inspiration from what he learned in Skull and Bones and from the Thule Society that Hitler and Goebbels and Goring cut their teeth in, Bohemian Grove, these evil organizations that perpetrate the ugly things that these criminals are doing to this country for which they must be held accountable.
They are the most violent, dirtiest people on the face of the earth. Somewhere Americans are going to have to take their country back and start finding out who are these people. Who are these people we call our representatives, the Bushes. George Bush, the president, his father, went around the country talking about a new world order. The people who are running this country from behind the scenes do not care a thing about Americans or bloodshed anywhere.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go wild.
I'm sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web.
Number 322.
Sir. Were you a member of Skull and Bones in college in Bush? Were you in the same secret society?
That's all right. Let me answer his question.
Whoa, don't chase me. I said don't him up.
And what you're looking at here, staggeringly, is a group of people, some of the most famous people in America, in long gowns. Behind them there, you see a 40-foot stone owl. And there's the fire between them, next to the lake at Bohemian Grove. Now, one might wonder, understandably, why the people that run the banking, political, economic system and the media in America should be dressed in long robes doing a ceremony to a 40-foot stone owl. I think we should be told.
No doubt you'll be hearing about all the differences between John Kerry and George W. Bush. But we've discovered they do have something in common. During their respective college days at Yale, they both belonged to a group called Skull and Bones.
He's come pretty close. She was part of a team that successfully recorded part of the initiation ceremony that takes place in the tomb's courtyard.
Okay, you have the doorway here.
Yeah.
Okay, then to the right you have a hedge, and then you have an evergreen tree. If you follow that line straight back, courtyard's in there.
Ah, okay.
So
that's where they have the ceremonies in
the outdoor part of it. Part of it was indoors. So we only got to see the outdoor part.
Right.
We only got to and to listen to the outdoor part. God only knows what went on indoors.
And what did you hear? What was it you know? You managed to get this unique
it was disgusting. It was gross. I mean, they were pretending to murder people. And
what was the tone of it, though? Was it jokey or was it quite...
No, it wasn't jokey at all. It was sick. It's about the only way I can describe it. It was sick.
What you're hearing is the first recording ever made of the Skull and Bones initiation ceremony. It has never been broadcast before. 15 new members of the club are being introduced into the macabre rituals of Skull and Bones by the senior students who are about to graduate. The club has what some might see as a strange fascination with death, skulls and bones. There's the chants too, difficult to hear first of all, but including the devil equals death, death equals death.
But when you get into a secret society of spirit worshippers, then, and especially when you're invited there by the direction of the higher-ups in the spirit world, you never get out of there alive. And he told us, he says, look, we worship spirits. We worship Lucifer and all his angels. They're just as beautiful as they did before they were cast out of heaven. He says there was a misunderstanding in the whole thing. He says among the inhabitants of the galaxies. And he says our master was misunderstood. And they always praise the great master, Satan, as a super intelligent being that he is, beautiful to behold. And if he ever appears to you, you won't be able to look upon him because it'll be too bright.
What have Herbert Hoover, Art Linkletter, Jack London, and Richard Nixon all had in common? Well, they've all been members of the exclusive all-male Bohemian Club in California, where every year at this time, the elite from around the country get together for 2.5 weeks of fun and games.
Among its members are businessmen like Leonard Firestone and Edgar Kaiser, and political figures like Gerald Ford, Henry Kissinger, William French Smith, and George Shultz. President Reagan, Vice President Bush, and Defense Secretary Weinberger are members of other camps. Richard Nixon is a Bohemian, and so are high-ranking executives of such companies as Eastern Airlines, Standard Oil of Indiana, and Bank of America. Privacy is one of the Grove's most cherished virtues. Members may not photograph, record, speak, or write about activities at the retreat. While many public officials are Grove members, the press is a distinctly unwelcome guest.
We're from ABC News.
Well, get back there. Get back there.
Can we talk to somebody in the...
Get back there.
You see, for over 120 plus years in Northern California, in Sonoma County, on a 2,700-acre secluded redwood grove, leaders from around the world, prime ministers, chancellors, presidents, governors, again, the heads of industry, banking, academia, the media, Hollywood, travel there to engage in bizarre, ancient Canaanite, Luciferian, Babylon mystery religion ceremonies. We were inside 4 hours. That's only one day out of the 2 weeks that they meet there for the admitted Summer Fire Festival of the Bohemian Club.
When will you learn that me ye cannot slay? Year after year ye burn me in this grove, lifting your puny shouts of triumph to the stars. But when again ye turn your faces to the marketplace, do ye not find me waiting at the hole? Fools! Fools! Fools to dream ye conquer care!
Nay, thou mocking spirit, it is not all a dream. We know thou waitest for us, year after year within this happy grove. Our fellowship bans thee for a space. Thy malevolence which would pursue us here has lost its power under these friendly trees. So shall we burn thee once again this night, and in the flames that eat thine effigy, we shall read the sign, Midsummer sets us free.
Ye shall burn me once again! Now but leave way, which hither ye have brought from regions where I reign. Ye fools and priests, upon your fire.
Hail, fellowship's eternal flame. Once again, midsummer sets us free.
Hello everyone, God bless everyone in Jesus' name. This video is going to be about counterfeit demonic manifestations of Christ working in the body of believers. No. God can make you feel things physically. So too can devils, which is why it is important to test the spirit and have a knowledge of what is written. Counterfeit manifestations of Christ now follow quickly, and all of these videos kind of like stair step, so you might want to watch the previous video. So counterfeit manifestations after the ground has been given to the devils, and after the devil has tricked the person into thinking that God was talking to them, and then the devil jumps into the person's body. So then after that, so what happens now? So the devil is now in the body of the person. So what happens? Let's see. So even more counterfeit manifestations follow. So what are the counterfeit manifestations? You might have movement in your body, pleasant thrills, touches, pleasant thrills in your body, touches in your body, a glow as of fire or like heat in different parts of your body, sensation of cold in your body, shaking in your body. So the devil might come to you and say, "Oh, I'm God," while you're lying in the bed, and then you'll be shaking there like a leaf in your bed. That's the devil's. Tremblings, all accepted. Tremblings in your body, all accepted by the believer as from God, but showing what a full entry the deceiving spirit has obtained in your body, in the bodily frame. So there's a difference, there's a distinction between manifestations of evil spirits, demons and devils, with and in the body and mind of a believer, although when they are really inside your body, they can make it look as if they are outside your body, both in influence and action. So both in how they influence you and in what actions they can take. When evil spirits are really on the outside of the person's body, but they want to go inside your body, what do? So they work by a sudden suggestion to the mind, which is, so they'll be like, "Oh, go here, go there," a sudden suggestion to your mind. It might just come out of nowhere, which is not the ordinary working of the mind, but these suggestions come from without, so they come from outside. So another way is you might get a flash of memory. So it's not ordinary working of the memory, but it's coming from the outside. Another manifestation of devils from the outside of the body when they want to come into you is you might feel touches on your skin, twitching of nerves, feelings of drought, and sensations of wind blowing. And the devils, they can do all these types of manifestations that they want. They can do all this type of stuff. And I actually had devils blowing wind on me, and it was the devils, and they were talking to me, and they were blowing wind on me, and they wanted to get into my body. And I'm like, get out of here, devil, in Jesus' name. So I commanded it to get out of here. And they left. Now, I didn't see the devil. I didn't want to look at the devil. I didn't look at him. I didn't want to see him. Even though he was trying to make me look at him, I wasn't going to look. But I did hear him, and he was blowing wind on me. You know, so they can do all these sensations or whatever, but you have the victory in Christ if you stand tall against the devils and command them to leave. In Jesus' name. So I have experience with this sensation of wind blowing. So I hope this helps. God bless him.
Chapter 5. And they came over unto the other side of the sea, into the country of the Gadarenes. And when he was come out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no man could bind him, no, not with chains, because that he had been often bound with fetters and chains, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken in pieces, neither could any man tame him. And always night and day he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. But when he saw Jesus afar off, he ran and worshipped him, and cried with a loud voice, and said, What have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou torment me not. For he said unto him, Come out of the man, thou unclean spirit. And he asked him, What is thy name? And he answered, saying, My name is Legion, for we are many. And he besought him much that he would not send them away out of the country. Now there was there nigh unto the mountains a great herd of swine feeding. And all the devils besought him, saying, Send us into the swine, that we may enter into them. And forthwith Jesus gave them leave. And the unclean spirits went out and entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently down a steep place into the sea. They were about 2,000, and were choked in the sea. And they that fed the swine fled, and told it in the city and in the country. And they went out to see what it was that was done. And they came to Jesus, and see him that was possessed with the devil, and had the legion, sitting, and clothed, and in his right mind. And they were afraid. And they that saw it told them how it befell to him that was possessed with the devil, and also concerning the swine. And they began to pray him to depart out of their coasts. And when he was come into the ship, he that had been possessed with the devil prayed him that he might be with him. Howbeit Jesus suffered him not, but saith unto him, Go home to thy friends, and tell them how great things the Lord hath done for thee, and hath had compassion on thee. And he departed, and began to publish in Decapolis how great things Jesus had done for him, and all men did marvel. And when Jesus was passed over again by ship unto the other side, much people gathered unto him, and he was nigh unto the sea. And behold, there cometh one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name. And when he saw him, he fell at his feet, and besought him greatly, saying, My little daughter lieth at the point of death. I pray thee, come and lay thy hands on her, that she may be healed, and she shall live. And Jesus went with him, and much people followed him, and thronged him. And a certain woman, which had an issue of blood 12 years, and had suffered many things of many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was nothing bettered, but rather grew worse, when she had heard of Jesus, came in the press behind, and touched his garment. For she said, If I may touch but his clothes, I shall be whole. And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of that plague. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that virtue had gone out of him, turned him about in the press, and said, Who touched my clothes? And his disciples said unto him, Thou seest the multitude thronging thee, and sayest thou, Who touched me? And he looked around about to see her that had done this thing. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what was done in her, came and fell down before him, and told him all the truth. And he said unto her, Daughter, thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace, and be whole of thy plague. While he yet spake, there came from the ruler of the synagogue's house certain which said, Thy daughter is dead. Why troublest thou the master any further? As soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he saith unto the ruler of the synagogue, Be not afraid, only believe. And he suffered no man to follow him, save Peter, and James, and John the brother of James. And he cometh to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and seeth the tumult, and them that wept and wailed greatly. And when he was come in, he saith unto them, Why make ye this ado, and weep? The damsel is not dead, but sleepeth. And they laughed him to scorn. But when he had put them all out, he taketh the father and the mother of the damsel, and them that were with him, and entereth in where the damsel was lying. And he took the damsel by the hand, and said unto her, Talitha cumi, which is, being interpreted, Damsel, I say unto thee, arise. And straightway the damsel arose and walked, for she was of the age of 12 years. And they were astonished with a great astonishment. And he charged them straitly that no man should know it, and commanded that something should be given her to eat. The Gospel according to John, chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. The same came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all men through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That was the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And the Word was made flesh, and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. John bare witness of him, and cried, saying, This was he of whom I spake. He that cometh after me is preferred before me, for he was before me. And of his fullness have all we received, and grace for grace. For the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. No man hath seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, which is in the bosom of the Father, he hath declared him. And this is the record of John, when the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, Who art thou? And he confessed and denied not, but confessed, I am not the Christ. And they asked him, What then? Art thou Elias? And he saith, I am not. Art thou that prophet? And he answered, No. Then said they unto him, Who art thou? That we may give an answer to them that sent us. What sayest thou of thyself? He said, I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness, Make straight the way of the Lord, as said the prophet Esaias. And they which were sent were of the Pharisees. And they asked him, and said unto him, Why baptizest thou then, if thou be not that Christ, nor Elias, neither that prophet? John answered them, saying, I baptize with water, but there standeth one among you, whom ye know not. He it is, who coming after me is preferred before me, whose shoes latchet I am not worthy to unloose. These things were done in Bethabara, beyond Jordan, where John was baptizing. The next day John seeth Jesus coming unto him, and saith, Behold, the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sin of the world. This is he of whom I said, After me cometh a man which is preferred before me, for he was before me. And I knew him not, but that he should be made manifest to Israel. Therefore am I come baptizing with water. And John bare record, saying, I saw the Spirit descending from heaven like a dove, and it abode upon him, and I knew him not. But he that sent me to baptize with water, the same said unto me, Upon whom thou shalt see the Spirit descending, and remaining on him, the same is he which baptizeth with the Holy Ghost. And I saw, and bare record that this is the Son of God. Again the next day after John stood, and 2 of his disciples, and looking upon Jesus as he walked, he saith, Behold, the Lamb of God. And the 2 disciples heard him speak, and they followed Jesus. Then Jesus turned and saw them following, and saith unto them, What seek ye? They said unto him, Rabbi, which is to say, being interpreted, Master, Where dwellest thou? He saith unto them, Come and see. They came and saw where he dwelt, and abode with him that day, for it was about the 10th hour. One of the two which heard John speak and followed him was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first findeth his own brother Simon, and saith unto him, We have found the Messiah, which is, being interpreted, the Christ. And he brought him to Jesus. And when Jesus beheld him, he said, Thou art Simon the son of Jonah. Thou shalt be called Cephas, which is by interpretation a stone. The day following Jesus would go forth into Galilee, and findeth Philip, and saith unto him, Follow me. Now Philip was of Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip findeth Nathanael, and saith unto him, We have found him, of whom Moses in the law and the prophets did write, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. And Nathanael said unto him, Can there be any good thing come out of Nazareth? Philip saith unto him, Come and see. Jesus saw Nathanael coming to him, and saith of him, Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom is no guile. Nathanael saith unto him, Whence knowest thou me? Jesus answered and said unto him, Before that Philip called thee, when thou wast under the fig tree, I saw thee. Nathanael answered and saith unto him, Rabbi, thou art the Son of God, thou art the King of Israel. Jesus answered and said unto him, Because I said unto thee, I saw thee under the fig tree, believest thou? Thou shalt see greater things than these. And he saith unto him, Verily, verily, I say unto you, hereafter ye shall see heaven open, and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man.